Let's hope it all works.
Okay. Are we on? Should we start? Are we online? Okay. Good. Colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, a very warm welcome to all of you to today's session on migration statistics that Switzerland is co-organizing together with IOM, UNSD-DESA and the OECD. My name is Christine Lowe. I'm the Deputy Director of the Peace and Human Rights Division at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Switzerland. It is my pleasure to moderate today's session and to welcome those of you who are in the room with us today here in the Swiss capital of Bern. Switzerland is very proud to host this year's UN World Data Forum, despite the challenging circumstances that the pandemic has posed to all of us and still does. We have postponed it from last year, and we're really happy that at least we can do it hybridly this year. We are glad to welcome some of you in Bern and also to have everyone else join online. And so we can really have interactions in all different ways and means, and we have become pros over the last 1.5 years how to manage these new working modalities. The main objective of today's session is to bring migration data to the forefront of the discussions here at the UN World Data Forum. Switzerland is particularly interested in migration data. We are convinced that the lack of reliable data is a major obstacle for global governments on migration and for measuring the process on the goals on the 2030 agenda. Switzerland therefore supports the International Forum on Migration Statistics, in short the IFMS. The IFMS is the largest gathering of migration data experts with the aim to promote global peer learning to strengthen migration data. We are glad that the IFMS data community makes a stopover in Bern today with this event. In the next hour, we will look at the past, present, and the future. We will embark on a journey looking back to the first edition of the IFMS in Paris, the second edition in Cairo, and then we will look ahead to the next IFMS in 2022. We will also have a regional perspective from Africa and a colleague from the UK who will share insight on the impact of COVID-19 on gathering migration data. Before giving the floors to the panelists, I would like to suggest 3 areas of future work towards strengthening migration data. The first evolved around shifting the narrative on the use and need for migration data. Switzerland firmly believes that data on migration and mobility is not only important for migration governments, it is equally relevant for humanitarian, development and peace actors. Migration data is key for effective protection responses along the entire spectrum that starts from emergency interventions and spans through development and peace-building processes. Secondly, we believe in the relevance of data innovation and research to better measure population mobility. This also includes a role for the private sector. Against this background, I'm glad to announce that together with the company Hewlett-Packard HP and the Geneva-based foundation Flowminder, Switzerland will support a new project whose objective is to distribute mobility data from national mobile network operators for use by the international community. The project will start in 2022 in a few pilot countries. My third and final point touches upon the gender dimensions of migration, a topic that is still under-researched, we all know it. The recent outflows from Afghanistan have painted a highly gendered picture of migration. The recently published guidance note on gender and migration data by IOM UNSD-DESA highlights key gender gaps in migration data worldwide and proposes clear, actionable steps for National Statistical Offices. It is therefore our hope that such knowledge will inspire the work of the data networks in the future. It is now my great pleasure to open today's panel. I kindly ask all of distinguished panelists to keep their interventions to 5 minutes. We don't have much time today, so let's try to keep to it, because this will allow us to turn to the audience here and online for, to take some questions. Online participants from the audience will have the opportunity throughout the panel discussion to post some questions in the chat box. So my first speaker will be Mr. Jean-Christophe Dumont, Head of the International Migration Division at the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, the OECD. He will take us back to the first ever IFMS in 2018 in Paris. Jean-Christophe, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. It's a great pleasure for me to be part of this panel and indeed to tell you a little bit a short birth story of the IFMS, and for that let me share my screen. I hope you can see it right now. Is this the case? Yes?
Yes.
You see my screen?
Perfect.
Yes?
Perfect, yes.
Okay. So OECD, as you know, has been investing for more than 45 years now in trying to improve migration data, improve the availability of migration amongst and to member states, improve the comparability of the data, improve the timeliness of the data, and more than anything else, improve the relevance of the data for policy making. That being said, we realized that a number of things were quickly changing and that require some action. The first thing is that in the past few decades, we've seen an increasing diversity and number and diversity of data producers. Not only NSOs, but also the academia, but also the private sectors, and some more data producers, as we just been hearing. And that required to connect these people to provide them with a space for changing. The second is that we've seen a number of innovation, and not least the emergence of big data. A reference to mobile phone data was just made. But there have been many more sort of innovation through the use of administrative data, but also some privately produced data. We need to learn from each other how to use and exploit this data better. And third, we realize that there is an increasing or persisting gap between the reality and the perception of migration phenomena. When you ask people how much immigrants they think there is in their country, it's very common that they overestimate the number by at least a factor of 2. So imagine in other areas like humanitarian migration, like integration of immigrants, people get it fairly wrong on the reality of migration. And for all these reasons, we thought that it was necessary to take action to do something in the data front. And in terms of a process, what happened is that during the negotiation of a global compact for migration, UNSD-DESA, IOM, and OECD joined forces to lobby to make a call for including the data element in the GCM. We have acted at different levels together in a very cooperative way with UNSD-DESA and IOM. And we're very happy to see that at the end of a negotiation, not only there was one objective on data, but it was the first of a GCM. And in this process, the idea of the IFMS came up with our partners, and we decided to start it in 2018 with the first one. How did we organize it? Around the magic number of 6. So UNSD-DESA, OECD, and IOM. We brought together a programming committee with 6 renowned personalities from 4 continents We have convinced 6 partner organizations, UNSD, Eurostat, ILO, UNHCR, UNODC, and the World Bank, to join this effort. We launched a 6-month call for paper and session to the international community and collected almost 1,000 proposals from this call. And we selected 6 main themes for the first IFMS around the issue of improving the production and the use of data, around the issue of taking stock of global initiatives, including the one from the UN, the issue of public opinion and migration, as I mentioned, data innovation and big data, and capacity building, plus a specific topic on migration survey through a masterclass, which was given by Douglas Massey. At this event, more than 500 people participated from 90 countries. There were almost 40 parallel sessions, 49, involving 240 speakers, so really a big event, opened by the OECD Secretary General, the IOM Director General, and the Undersecretary for Economic and Social Affairs from the UN. We also benefited from a keynote address by Louise Arbour, who was the special representative on migration in charge of negotiating the Global Compact for Migration. In terms of the outcomes, you have all the information on the website here. I just want to highlight a few key findings from that big gathering. So first, and that was not the surprise, but there are still many data gaps, including in the OECD, but obviously much larger going beyond the OECD. And we'll come back to that with a presentation from Leila Ben Ali in a presentation on Africa after that. We also realized, and that was part of our action to convince all the stakeholders of the need to include data, that we need better data to inform the SDGs and the Global Compact. Third, that if NSO take the lead, notably in some of the innovation, they are not the only stakeholders. Ministries of Interior, the academia, private sector, there are many stakeholders. One point which was very important in this discussion is that we need to go beyond averages. If we want to convince the public that migration is not as high as they think, is more profitable than they believe, we need to go beyond averages. We need to go at the local level. We need to be able to talk about migration by category. We need to talk about migration separately for highly skilled, low skilled workers, by gender, as the chair mentioned. This is extremely important. And we need also to find a way to better communicate on migration, and the discussion only started in Paris in 2018. So what are the achievements I've mentioned? I mean, we have basically jointly with IOM and UNSD-DESA have put on the move a process which we hope will continue and has continued actually in Egypt, and will also continue through a third edition of the IFMS. But we hope that this is really a permanent endeavor that we can complete together. We have started to create synergies between actors, but more need to be done in this area. We need also to improve the capacity of countries which are lacking resources, and that also involves some funding questions, notably through international cooperation. And we need to, through the network that we have initiated in Paris, to better disseminate innovation and advanced research. So with that, I will end my presentation. Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much, Jean-Christophe, and thanks for being such a model on keeping the time. Quite impressive. Thanks so much for outlining the results of the 2018 IFMS. And with this, I would now like to hand the floor to my neighbor to the left, to Franz Latschko, Director of the Global Migration Data Analysis Center at the International Organization for Migration, IOM. He will report on the key outcomes of the IFMS 2020 in Cairo. And welcome to Bern. since you're here.
Thank you so much for inviting me to Bern, and it's a great pleasure to actually be here in person on this stage. It's quite a strange feeling. I think the last time I was at a big conference, it was in fact the IFMS, which took place in January 2020 in Cairo. So let me start off by saying that we're extremely grateful to Switzerland, Germany, and Egypt for all the support they gave us in enabling us to organize the second International Forum on Migration Statistics. And what I would like to do in my 5 minutes today is to essentially do two things. First of all, tell you a little bit about what happened in Cairo and how we have managed, I think, to achieve some really concrete initiatives in addition to organizing probably one of the largest global conferences on migration data and statistics. There were a couple of key outcomes which I'm going to describe in a moment. One is that we agreed on, with African countries, that we would launch for the first time ever an Africa-wide migration data network covering nearly all the countries in Africa. And secondly, today we are launching an IFMS, Global Migration Data Network. And again, this is something that was linked to the discussions in Cairo. So I'm going to mention those briefly in a moment. The other thing I think we can do today is to look forward and to think about how do we want to change and improve the International Forum on Migration Statistics in the future. Do we want it to become more than, I'm reluctant to say only, a major global conference on migration data and statistics, but are there activities that we should be involved in between conferences? Should we change the nature of the conference next year? Do we want different types of participants, different themes? Do we want a different approach? This is an important time to take stock of the achievements of the International Forum on Migration Statistics. So let me briefly, I actually have to go through this. Let me just briefly go through these slides. Just a quick reminder that the second International Forum on Migration Statistics was hosted by Egypt during its presidency of the African Union. And at the opening, we had the Commissioner, the African Union Commissioner for Social Affairs, together with IOM's Director General. And there was a strong focus on Africa at this global conference. We were very pleased that we were able to attract 700 participants from 99 countries, and especially countries in Africa. Like as with the first conference in Paris, we covered a broad range of themes. I'm not going to list them all here, but you can see that this is a very comprehensive conference. It covers all aspects of migration. We had sessions on internal displacement, refugees, the SDGs, data governance, big data, etc. Thirdly, as Jean-Christophe said, and it's very difficult to summarize all the discussions that took place over 3 or 4 days in Cairo, but I think what happens at the IFMS is you bring together the global community and you begin to create a community of practice. And this hasn't really happened in the past in the migration field. Migration statistics was often regarded as something like a niche area of in the migration field. And I think what the IFMS has helped to do, also in partnership with DESA and OECD, is that we've been able to galvanize the migration community and get them thinking much more about migration challenges and opportunities. And there are many. DESA, for example, reported that it's still very difficult to report on global flows of migrants. They collect lots of data on stocks of migrants, but it's very difficult, you know, when we're thinking about national vaccination plans around the world and countries ask us, you know, what is the latest flow of migrants into country X or Y, it's difficult to find that sort of information. The other thing I think that we learned, particularly in Cairo, is that a lot of the time we are talking to ourselves within the international migration community, and we're not talking enough to the private sector, which is generating so much of the data in real time. And I was in the last session. In real time, you know, every time we use our phones and our laptops and you know, everywhere you go now, we are generating data, and we're not fully capturing that data at the moment. And one of the things I think we would like to do in the future is to have much more private sector engagement, bring them into the conversation at the next IFMS. That was one of the key things, I think, that came out of the last IFMS. The other innovation of the second IFMS is that we organized the fourth day only for African countries and some agencies that brought together the National Statistical Offices from African countries to focus on data capacity development needs. And we went beyond the general discussions that you have in conferences to really think about what can be done very concretely to improve data on migration in very challenging contexts in different parts of the world where resources may be very limited. And we will hear in a moment from my colleague from the African Union, who will be presenting the new Africa Migration Data Network, which we launched earlier this year. Just by way of conclusion, the other thing that we realized in organizing two IFMSs is that there is a huge international community of not only experts, but stakeholders of various kinds interested in the topic of migration, data, and statistics. And the IFMS helps to bring those people together. But one of the things we'd like to do is to now create a dedicated IFMS Global Migration Data Network, which would facilitate the ongoing exchange of information, innovative practices, learning and collaboration across the globe. And I think this could be a very, very interesting, concrete outcome of the IFMS, which will take it to the next stage. And at the end, you will also be hearing from my colleague at UNSD-DESA about our plans for next year. So thanks very much. I'm not sure about the time, but I'll stop there.
Also very good. Thank you very much. Thanks very much, Frank. And with this, we heard it already, we will move on to the next speaker, who's Ms. Leila Ben Ali, the Director of the African Migration Observatory of the African Union Commission. Ms. Ben Ali will indeed present the regional perspective on the IFMS and brief us on the latest activities in the Africa region. We cannot hear you. Perhaps you're still muted? Now it's fine.
A pleasure to participate with you for this UN World Forum organized by UNSD, IOM, and the government of Switzerland. As it's mentioned in the on this two presentations, that collection, management, dissemination, and analysis of migration and mobility data are crucial for establishing evidence-based policies. Ensuring the efficient implementation of such process is well in line with the African initiatives, such as the African Union Agenda 2063, the SHASA2, the African Charter of Statistics, also the migration policy framework of Africa, and also at global level, the 2030 Agenda and the Global Compact on Migration, in order to enhance EU member states' capacities to effectively and efficiently improve migration governance. It is necessary to establish a mechanism to strengthen the collection, management, analysis, and dissemination of migration data for informing policymakers. African Union Commission, IOM, GIMDAC, Statistics Sweden, and OECD had organized workshop on strengthening migration data capacity in Africa at the margin of the International Forum on Migration Statistics. And the main recommendation retained from this side event was to establish a network to enhance coordination on migration data initiative on the continent and strengthening the information sharing between the EU member states, RECs, and partners on migration and migration data. Next, please, the next slide, please. Next. Was I already briefed? Then the need to establish an African migration data network is crucial to enhance the coordination, communication, and collaboration between EU member states, as well as the regional economic communities and partners, in the aim to share challenges, good practices, and lessons learned on migration data and statistics, in addition to disseminate and share the information related to the initiatives, declaration, and decision taken at regional, continental, and global level on migration data. In this context, AUC, or African Union Commission, IOM, GIMDAC, Statistics Sweden, and OECD launched the African Migration Data Network on April 2021. The overall objective of this network are to promote a continental exchange of challenges, good practices, and lessons learned on migration data issues, facilitate coordination and collaboration among members of the network in the implementation of migration data related initiatives, and improve their effectiveness through dissemination and outreach. Next, please. The African Migration Data Network is a network of migration focal points in National Statistical Offices and key migration relevant ministries in each country in Africa. A steering committee group is established and include representative of AU. We have StatAfrica, we have the African Migration Observatory, and other institutions. Also, IOM, GIMDAC, Statistics Sweden, and OECD Development Center are part of the steering committee group. Also, I want to inform you that the first steering group meeting of the African Migration Data Network was organized on March to discuss the lying foundation of the network in terms of concrete objectives, memberships, and secretariat and flagship initiative to be planned. Also, for the for the representative of EU member states, focal points were already nominated to be part of the networks. And the RECs, we have 8 RECs. They are members of these networks, and even the networks is open for any other structure, academia, researcher, and even private sector, civil society are part of this network. Next, please. Alors, as I mentioned, this network was launched on April, and institution was part of these events. We had more than 100 participants participated in the launching of this event. Alors, some flagships and flagship initiative were planned to be implemented by this African Migration Data Network. Mainly, we are working to develop a resource mobilization strategy to support the sustainability of this initiative. Also, we established a secretariat to ensure the liaison and coordination. We are developing detailed documents stating the mandate of the secretariat. And also we organized the second African School on Migration Statistics as a flagship initiative under this network. The second one, we organized it on June. Also, this network is organizing webinars, webinar series monthly, the last Thursday of each every month. Yes, last week we organized a webinar on migration and migration statistics and gender. Also, we planned to organize additional capacity building activities and to develop some publication under and with the support of the members of this network. And we are now working to link this network to other networks to share experience, but also to raise awareness at all levels. The establishment of such a network on migration data will ensure synergy of activities and also will build capacity of statisticians and specialists in migration at national, regional, and continental level with the global level. And also we will boost the dialogue between producer and user of migration and the different stakeholders in migration statistics, migration and mobility data and statistics. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much. Very, very interesting to hear how this is unfolding. Thank you very much. Now, next, I would like to give the floor to Mr. Chris Stickney, Assistant Deputy Director of the Centre for International Migration in the UK, who will speak on challenges, opportunities and innovations in migration statistics, in particular in the context of COVID-19. Chris, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Ms. Lowe. And sorry I can't be with you in Bern. Thanks everyone for listening. So what do taxes, pensions, benefits, and universities have in common? You might be thinking of some sort of average income by qualification, perhaps, but actually these tell us a lot about international migration. The UK Office for National Statistics are transforming their measures of population migration, and they have been for the past few years. So much has happened since the IFMS in Cairo last year. The coronavirus pandemic stopped our traditional intentions-based survey and forced an acceleration of how we provided new measures for international migration. It's taught us to be pragmatic when finding solutions to challenges, to learn from our international partners, to recognize the wider statistical system that we're part of, which includes all population. Measuring migration is key for the UK right now. In the year up to the pandemic, more than 700,000 people immigrated into and 400,000 emigrated out of the UK. Whilst those figures were a record high for the UK, we've seen positive net migration in the country since 1994. But the makeup of migration has changed. Since the referendum of exiting the EU in 2016, fewer people have immigrated into the UK from the EU. And that final exit collided with the pandemic in a matter of months, and immediately and fundamentally migration patterns changed. Migration is an integral part of the UK's economy and society. It's the biggest driver of population change. And our statistics show about 10 million people out of a population of 67 million were born overseas. So last year we stopped interviewing people in seaports and airports. That was our measure for migration. And we took that opportunity to provide our first admin-based migration estimates. So how's it going? Well, it took us a year to provide our first estimates, but we're truly innovating. We're not just using border data on its own, but we are using tax and benefit data. We use that as a sign of activity that the migrants are still there. That method moves us away from using flows data, people moving from one place to another, to measure stocks, the size of the population. So we flipped that now, and we're using stocks data to measure flows. Admin data provides us a unique opportunity. When we link it to other sources, we can find out the characteristics of migrants and better understand their outcomes. And last week, the Inclusive Data Task Force that our UK National Statistician launched, they produced a series of recommendations to better measure hard-to-reach groups, including migrants. They've encouraged us to broaden the range of methods we use and create new approaches to understanding experiences across the population of the UK. So understanding migrant outcomes will help us understand the impact they have on the labour market, for example. And that's something very hard to do with survey data. Some of you may have heard there's a heavy goods vehicle driver shortage right now in the UK. Is it because of a lack of foreign-born workers? The answer is probably not, but we don't know because we rely on the labour force survey and the confidence intervals are so wide, we're not confident. And an intentions-based survey would clearly have its challenges as well in a pandemic. People don't always know at the time when they come into the port whether they intend to stay here 12 months or more. But admin data means you have to wait 12 months to say whether someone officially is a long-term migrant or not. And if we wait that long, that lag before publishing can really reduce the value of the data it can provide. Now that's where stochastic modeling techniques can help fill the gaps. It can predict the outcome of what migrants are doing based on past behaviors. Past behaviors is not an easy thing, of course, during a pandemic, but it was our best option. So earlier this year, we published a states-based model which revealed those first few months of the pandemic and showed there was very little migration. That sounds a bit boring to say migration was flat, but the speculation was that more than 1 million people left the UK, a mass exodus, if you like, and speculation in that instance was more harmful than crude estimates. But we have to be cautious. Much like a number of our national statistical offices across the globe have, we are cautious about the certainty in our estimates. We know more work needs to be done to improve our model and the admin data that feeds into it. And we need to understand how behaviors are changing during the pandemic if we continue to use models. Getting as much as we can from admin data sources will still have issues that may not be reconciled. If a person stops paying taxes or receiving benefits, our current method may count them as an immigrant. Or if they enter the country and don't hit our admin data sources, we may not count them as an immigrant. And those underrepresented groups are often the most vulnerable. We don't have a population register, so understanding the strengths and limitations of the data sources are key. So our work, unfortunately, isn't done. Our focus now is understanding the changing user needs since the pandemic. It makes sense that less people are interested in a 12-month long-term definition and more interested in who's here now for vaccination coverage, as an example. So we continue to adapt. The next year, we'll be publishing our census results, and that will really help validate our analysis. Before then, we're publishing an update on our research in November, and I hope you find time to take a look. And thank you very much for your intervention.
Thank you very much, Chris. And now let me turn to Ms. Maria Isabel Cobos Hernandez, our last speaker from the Social and Gender Statistics section of the Statistics Division of UNSD-DESA in New York. Maria will brief us on the new and revised international recommendations on migration statistics and the initial ideas for the upcoming IFMS conference in 2022. Maria, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Christine, and hello to everyone. Today, I'm very excited to join the panel, even if it's remotely. I wish I was there with you in Bern, but in particularly, I would like to share some of the things that we've been doing at UNSD and the group of experts on migration statistics on the last couple of years. What have been we up to? And hearing about the innovations that they are doing in the UK really makes me excited and hopeful of what is to come in terms of migration stats. You might know that we've been working on new standards. And the first question that we get asked often is why? Well, our current standards date from 1998. So many things have happened since then. We have new types of migration and mobility. There are other standards that have been already developed, for example, for refugee statistics or in general displaced populations. There were also concerns about the rigidity and the complexity of the current recommendations. And as Frank mentioned, there is the ever there problem of low quality and low availability of statistics. For example, in flows, apart from the EU member states, we only have figures on flows for 37 countries. So this is quite concerning. So that's why the world needed a modern conceptual framework for the production of international statistics on migration. One conceptual framework that was more flexible and most of all, more grounded on policy relevance, which was also touched upon by Jean-Christophe in his intervention. This obviously comes with a challenge. There is a balance to be stricken. On one hand, the development of common standards, common definitions, concepts that allow us comparability across countries, and on the other side, going a little away from those rigid concepts that actually can foster the production of statistics at the national level. So this is no piece of cake, and the group of experts have been working on this for a few years already. They, together with UNSD and Population Division in DESA and the expert groups of developed and developing countries, developed this conceptual framework that will be the heart of the revision of these 1998 recommendations. The key elements of this is that it fosters stronger links with data needs that arise from policy needs. So we are really trying to link, to strengthening that link. There is also a clear distinction between international migration and more broadly international mobility. It makes a very clear distinction. Of course, it comes with its challenges. Thirdly, the conceptual framework also proposes alignment of migration flows with the population change. We believe that this will improve the quality of the statistics at national level, and also will improve comparability at international level, as long as we have well-documented processes to be able to work out what country does in their own context. It's very important, it's crucial that the flows in each country is aligned with the measurement of the country's resident population. That also comes with a challenge of duration of stay, but we believe that really this is the key for fostering more and better data at the national level. And we are also putting forward the reconciliation of flows and stock of 4 subgroups of the population. These 4 subgroups are relevant both for measurement and for policy. And based on this, we would develop the disaggregation variables to slice these four subgroups of the population to actually go into the most disadvantaged groups within these subgroups. So this makes up the broad strokes of the conceptual framework that has been endorsed by the Statistical Commission this year. So we have been given the green light, if you like, from member states, from countries, to go ahead with the next steps, to keep working on what will be the other arms of the recommendations. The conceptual framework is the heart, and then we need to work on how to operationalize it. The next steps in the horizon are keep working with a group of experts to finalize a core set of topics and indicators that would be the guidance for countries, and building up on priority themes, going again with the magical number 6 that Jean-Christophe mentioned. We have identified 6 priority policy themes that need to be nurtured by data. We are still debating which indicators, which variables are important for each of the 6 policy priorities. And we will continue to operationalize the conceptual framework to look at the limitations and advantages of the different data sources, how to integrate them, how to come up with new methodologies that on one hand respond to urgent needs of data without jeopardizing the quality of the data that we are producing, all with the goal, the really gold standard of better connecting policy with data issues, and at the same time trying to improve quality and availability of data. So coming to the next big thing, in our horizon as well, the organization of the third IFMS. It will be in autumn 2022. We don't have still fixed dates to give you, but it will be in an exciting place. It's the turn of DESA, this time to lead the organization. We are taking the baton from IOM and OECD. Of course, we still work as a core team in the organization. We already have identified a few potential topics, but we are still very much brainstorming on what the thematic priorities should be about the forum. So please send us your suggestions, and we expect you to be there, hopefully not in a remote way. Hopefully we will be able to discuss in person. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Maria. Thank you to all panelists for your very interesting and substantive interventions. I would now like to open the floor for questions. We already received some online. I will take the liberty to choose some of them, but I would also like to give an opportunity to the audience in the room. If anyone has a question for this distinguished panel of experts, now would be the time to raise your hand. So we can take it in. So we would take, like, with the questions I have, 3-4 questions, and then turn back to the panel. So we have a small 10 minutes because we need to end on time. Everyone is very shy looking at each other. You're out of practice, I can see that. It's time that COVID goes away. If not, then I would say no, there's still no one. I'll say that I'll read out some of the questions we have received, and I would invite the panelists to listen very carefully, take notes as you can, and then I will turn over to you to address pieces of these questions as you see fit. So I'm turning to technology here. So the first one would be one, I think this would be one which would be very good for Frank. So I think this one I'm directing directly at you, which is migration data needs to be unpacked. Which kind of migration data, such as health and migration data, as we saw during the pandemic, is of critical importance to take decisions on targeting refugees and migrants for inclusive policies, programs, and implementation. We must focus on the implementation of target 17.18, implied across all populations-based targets across SDG framework. And this is kind of like an addition, or it goes together with this. There is a need for stronger data in the area of migration in general. What tenets of strength will we be looking at? Data quality, quantity, governance, etc. And the third question I would like to throw into the hat is how to make a greater use of big data to measure the international migration. How to integrate this into the official statistics. So I'd like to open this back around with you, Frank, here with me, and then I'll hand over to the other panelists.
Thank you very much. Yes, this is the problem when you're the only in-person panelist. I hope the others will help me out with some of these questions. So the first one, yes, on migration and health. I mean, in IOM, we have a very long tradition of working on this topic. And in fact, we have a migration and health research network, which is called MADRI, which is run out of our office in Manila, but it's a global network. So this is something that is a key priority, obviously, for the organization. As I mentioned, together with WHO, we have been focusing on national vaccination plans in recent months, and some very basic data questions come up all the time. How many migrants are there living in country X or Y? How many of them are currently included officially in the national vaccination plan? How many are really included? How many may, and what sorts of categories might be excluded? And we have been collecting data on this subject. It's certainly something that I think will be a growing priority for us in IOM, but in particular in Berlin. You may have noticed that in the last few weeks and months, WHO has launched a new global pandemic intelligence center in Berlin, and we are hoping that that center will also include a focus on mobile populations, and we look forward to engaging with that new WHO center in the near future. I can answer the other questions, but maybe you want to turn to the other panelists first.
Perhaps you can just, before I turn to the other panelists, say perhaps something on the IOM data portal, which in a more general terms also addresses some of these questions.
Yes. Well, regarding the third question and big data, one thing that we created with the, in fact, help of Switzerland is a data innovation directory. And so in the Global Migration Data Portal, you can find a section that provides very detailed information on innovative practices in the field of new technologies, big data. And we're continually updating that. That is, in fact, an initiative also sponsored by the Big Data for Migration Alliance. We're part of that alliance. And at the end of November in Berlin, we will be organizing a major conference focusing on question 3, which is how can we make better use of big data to inform migration policy and practice? And as I alluded to in my brief remarks, one of the big challenges is to look at what are the incentives for the public sector and the private sector to work more closely together on these questions. And that's something that we'll be looking at there. So
thank you very much, Frank, also for this edition. I'd like to turn now to the panelists in order of their appearance, so you can be prepared when I call on you, and I'd like to hand the floor back to Jean-Christophe.
Thank you very much. Yes, on this question of unpacking the migration statistic question, just want to come back to this necessity to go beyond averages. That's very clear. We will very shortly present new estimates on the fiscal impact of migration that clearly shows that countries like Switzerland, the UK, and many others have benefited from migration in a fiscal perspective. But that is in itself not enough to convince the general public. We need to go in far more details in order to be closer to their personal experience and tell them what it makes for them in particular. But I think the question is broader, and it's not only about looking at disaggregation by category, by geographical unit, etc. It's also about being able to encapsulate in our statistics all the aspects of migration. So it's not only, and certainly not only, about counting people crossing borders. It's about how long they will stay, how they will fare from an economic perspective, from a social perspective, how fast they learn the language, how they interact with their other resident population, and so on and so forth. So we need actually a wealth of very diverse information to really address the policy question that are top of the agenda. And that's where the IFMS can help by bringing together people who are looking at very different methods, data sources, have different policy questions, and by enabling them to exchange. One point on big data, because obviously the potential is huge. But it's fair also to say that they are not at the stage to replace, let's say, official statistics, not least because we are missing the confidence interval that are necessary to know what is the scope of what we miss. And I think in that perspective, the approach that was presented by the UK is extremely interesting. And it's not happening. I think the UK is largely leading this conversation on the use of administrative data to respond to some of the policy questions I've mentioned. But you see that in many other countries in the OECD and in non-OECD countries. So again, because these are, let's say, frontier work, uncharted areas, we need a space to exchange and discuss about what works and what doesn't work. And we very much look forward to the next IFMS that UNSD-DESA will be leading and organizing to have another opportunity to meet with colleagues and exchange.
Thank you very much. And now I would like to hand over to Leila.
Thank you very much. Well, from the African perspective, we know that data, we have a lot of gap in the availability of data in the different types of categories of migration. And the decision of the head of state to establish the African Migration Observatory, it's in line with this to raise the issue of gap of data and to work with to strengthen the different sources, the traditional sources, and also to discover new sources of data to fill this gap of data. We know that some initiative are already made in Africa at continental level, in StatAfrique with the Statistics Sweden to harmonize data, and we realized that the methodology at the level of methodology and definition, there is a lot of things to do to strengthen the capacity of member states and the RECs, because the RECs, regional economic communities, they have the role to coordinate and to facilitate the collect and the management of data. It means that we have a lot of things to do to enhance the use or the production and management of data from traditional sources, but we need to also to strengthen the new sources of data and also to share the good practices as presented the representative from UK. It's a good to bring the good experience and the lesson learned to strengthen the capacity of EU member state to for more availability, harmonized and quality data in Africa. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We have just been granted another 2 minutes, a little bit less than 2 minutes. I'd like to give the opportunity to Chris first and then Maria to just say 2 words in conclusion of this panel.
Yes, thank you. It's been great to hear others. I think just my final conclusions, data maybe lending itself to a slightly different framework, which is something we need to think hard about. That may challenge international coherence, but there may be different ways to measure a migrant. And then there's no single source. I think that's the best measure, but using multiple indicators as a way of measuring migration. That's something I'd really make a point about, particularly as the word big data came up a few times. I think there's value for things like big data, but perhaps not on their own. Thanks. I'll pass it over others. I know you will run out of time.
Thank you very much, and also for your understanding. Maria?
Thank you. Just as a final word, let me tell you that, for example, we have identified 54 indicators in the SDG framework that are relevant for migration. 40 of them overlap with gender relevance. Out of those 40, only 1 we have disaggregation by migratory status. So this is really concerning. We are pretty much driving blind. We need to improve the availability, and from the UNSD perspective, the only way to improve it is to be more flexible in our models. to really build from the bottom up, from the experience in the field, and integrating the different data sources to come up with better measures on migration and on migrants as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thanks to all the panelists. Thanks for everyone here in the room. I'll say we give a hand to the distinguished panel here, even if they might not, they see my hand clapping, but thanks for joining us today, and see you in next year at the next IFMS conference. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Recording stopped.